As you sit here, it seems like you have trouble sitting here. Do you?
I have total trouble sitting and being still, yes. I'm always moving and shaking or whatever.
Today we're talking with a nuclear engineer, a business consultant, and a slam poet. What do these three people have to do with each other? Well, they're all one person, a young man who has collected his life experiences and is turning them into positive messages.
Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox is Hawaii's first weekly television program produced and broadcast in high definition.
Aloha mai kako, I'm Leslie Wilcox. In this edition of Long Story Short, we'll meet the young man who's been called the Slam Poet Laureate of Hawaii. His early years have a comfortable familiarity to them, growing up in a small neighborhood surrounded by family and friends, playing outdoors until the sun went down. He didn't know it at the time, but his destiny was to travel far away in order to come home. He was born Stephen Kealoha Paoli Hongming Wong, but now he's simply Kealoha.
Connect to your roots. Hear the rhythms of our ancestors smiling down on us each time we chant their chants, each time we dance their dances, each time we surf the waves that they did. Connect. We are the next generation carrying the flags of United Nations, stating truths of peace, love, unity, and respect. The products of global consciousness mixed with cultural pride. We ride waves to save our place in the history of the islands. We ride waves the way we make love on shining sands. We ride waves to play with times long past. Connect to your roots. Hear the rhythms of our ancestors smiling down on us each time we chant their chants, each time we dance their dances, each time we surf the waves that they did. Connect.
Growing up with my parents was, it was just so genuine, you know. We grew up and a lot of stories were told and just listening, you know, a lot of just like listening and playing and just exploring our own little things that we did, you know, whether it was like me and my brother just playing games and making up games. We grew up spitting on the wall and dancing and singing about it. You know, like seriously, honestly, we had a game called Juju on the Wall. Me and my brother, or whether it was like getting pieces of tape and like winding them together and throwing them and hitting them or whatever, you know, we made up games. And then my parents were very involved in our extracurricular activities. So whether it was driving us to the soccer games and then like spending that time afterwards, where my dad would like, you know, kind of critique my game or whatever it is, and just kind of like we would talk then and have those moments of interaction, as well as, you know, with my mom, just kind of cruising with her, like going on errands, or, you know, like you just had those moments where they're always involved in our lives, to the point where like sometimes I was just like, Mom, Dad, why you gotta be everywhere that I am, you know? It's just like, but it was all love, you know, and that was the thing, and we came to realize that later, is that they just wanted to be a part of our lives, and you know, that was like the best thing that they could have done for us, you know? It's just to be involved.
And you had two brothers?
Two brothers, two older brothers.
Did y'all get along? Were you close in age?
I am not. Those two are, the oldest one is 7 years older than I am, and the next one is 5 years older than I am. My oldest bro, you know, he was more distant from me. The middle one was more of the peacekeeper, you know, so I was kind of like the little kid trying to come up and just like, you know, do my thing. But all in all, I mean, when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, we're close now. So like, you know.
You didn't maim each other.
Yeah, clearly, no limbs were lost, so we made it out of that.
So like many kids in the area, you started off going to elementary school at Cocoa Head.
Mm-hmm. Cocoa Head Elementary, so public school, you know, which was really cool because it was all about the after-school experience as well, you know. I mean, like you're interfacing with kids in your neighborhood, so you're riding bikes and just, you know, going to people's houses, and it was very safe, you know. It was like you're in your neighborhood, you're safe, and then eventually I ended up going to private school.
What was that like?
The transition?
Mm-hmm.
It was a shock, you know. I mean, like all of a sudden I wasn't doing so well, you know, like in terms of my grades and all that kind of thing. It was just kind of like, here's all these other kids who are working really hard, and I had to learn like how to work hard and work ethic. And my father, you know, he was very, he didn't care about the grades. He cared about the extra little things on the side that the teachers write that tell you about like how the effort was, and like, you know, how much, you know, how engaged the student was. And like I was getting bad marks in that, and my dad was like, that's what matters. You know, what kind of effort are you putting into it? I don't care about the grades. Put the effort in.
Did you work hard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you have to work hard?
I busted my butt, you know, throughout high school and throughout college. It was just, I had to, you know, in order to just learn this stuff.
Did your classmates have any idea of how hard you worked?
They didn't. Actually, I actually hid. I was good at hiding the amount of effort that I was putting in, because no one wants to be the nerd, right? I mean, like, especially for me. I mean, I was so involved in sports and all those things. You know, like the you know, sports and dancing and playing music, that I was able to hide the studying, the books and all that time, the late night stuff.
So you'd have you do sports, you do music, and then you'd go home and you'd hit the books?
Yeah, totally. I mean, like in the car, you know, on the way, like to and fro, school and or the soccer practices, the basketball practices, whatever, studying. And then like, I would have this weird thing that I would do is that if I had a test or something or a major homework assignment, I would do it until I fell asleep. The light would be on, and then the next morning, like the homework assignment would be done, or like whatever I was studying would be in my head. You know, I would just wake up with it there. I don't know what happened during the whole sleeping process.
Let it set overnight.
But yeah, you know, like it was just marinating, or I probably was waking up in the middle of the night and then like studying and then going back to sleep, and I had these cycles that would happen.
What about rebellion? What about you know, I don't think I want to do it your way, Mom and Dad?
That happens to everybody, and that happened for me roughly around like 8th grade, 9th grade. It lasted for about a year, and then I got through it.
What was your way of acting up? How did you let them know?
You know, I just those little things that teenagers do, you know, by making like sly remarks or ignoring them or whatever, you know. But the way that I see it now is that the quicker you can get through that, the better it is. I mean, because really it's all about the love and returning to those good values, and like, you know, I mean, like we have so little time with our family and with our parents. You know, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, you know, I lost my father a couple years ago, and like I'm just glad that we got through that stupid stuff quickly, so we could get to the good stuff, which was the love and the sharing and just like the exchange that should be happening between family members. You
went to school with quite a few wealthy children. What was it like? You feeling like my parents are on a budget, I really got to work here and value what my parents are doing for me?
I mean, it was easy to say grounded. I was never really concerned about looking at other people and seeing what they had. I was just really happy just being me. Of course, I had coaching along the way in terms of like to stay grounded in that sense and not worry about other people, and whether it was like my parents or their friends, and I had a whole community kind of backing me up in terms of raising me right, and not being concerned about judging other people and having them judge me.
You were admitted to MIT.
I was admitted to MIT, which was huge. You know?
And you pursued your studies in science and math.
For me, it was like it was a full blast of information, and it was just like you go there and like you get thrown all these thoughts and theories and you just get fully immersed in this world of technology and science and just theory.
But first of all, there was another culture adjustment you made.
East Coast.
East Coast, yeah.
Oh man, local boy going to the East Coast, saw snow for the first time when I was there. I didn't do the whole like college touring thing that a lot of kids do, you know. I just said, this is where I want to go, and whatever. I mean, like, it's gonna be rough. I assumed it was gonna be, and it was. And it was, man, major culture shock. I spent the first year, I got really depressed actually, because you end up in a place where it's snowing, it's really cold, you can't go outside, there's not a whole lot of sunlight, so like, you get done with classes and it's dark. And so I went through seasonal affects disorder, right? It's just like...
And did you feel like you were up to the competition of the other kids who were hand-selected from all over the country?
Sure. I busted my butt. I don't think I slept a whole lot during college.
So you're depressed and tired.
Yeah. Well, they have this saying over there, right? It's, what is it? It's sleep, grades, and friends. Choose 2 out of the 3.
Oh,
so
that's rough.
I chose friends and social life and academics, And so I had to sacrifice the sleep. I figured, I'll sleep when I'm older.
But you made good friends at MIT?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, it's all about, I mean, that's half of the experience for me, it's like those late night cramming sessions where you're supposed to be studying, but really you're talking about philosophy or exploring thoughts that are new, and that's what it was all about. I got hooked deeply into just having good conversation and philosophy and thinking. I seek out those types of people. I mean, because sure, you can be good at one thing, and that's cool. And maybe I'll come to you and like I'll really engage with that one thing. But in essence, I'm looking for people who can like interface on all different kinds of levels, and just like we can grow together and spiral and build off of each other's thoughts. I'm really not into debate as much as I am into just elevation and just like building on thoughts. Debate is all about tearing down the other person, right? That's not for me.
So what you were most interested in when you went to MIT, actually maybe symbolic, nuclear fusion.
Exactly. Nuclear fusion, the combination of particles to create immense amounts of energy. I mean, to me, it's the holy grail, right? And to a lot of people, it's the holy grail. I mean, like, I still hope it's going to happen sometime soon,
And so is that what you studied? What was your degree in?
My degree was nuclear engineering, which is sort of a fancy way of saying just like nuclear physics, applied nuclear physics. Like, what can you do with nuclear physics?
Well,
what can you do?
What were you planning to do with it?
I wanted to create fusion energy, the next holy grail, and just be a part of that movement. But I definitely found out during my college years that that's not necessarily. It's kind of a fantasy world, I mean, like the politics that goes on is not in place to support a technology like fusion energy, I mean, because you think about it, right? A politician needs to get re-elected in 4 to 6 years. Investing in a technology that's going to come 50 years from now, not a whole lot of politicians want to devote that kind of money to it. Like most of this country is concerned about, the everyday things like jobs and which is which is great. Like people need to work and people need to eat. But I mean, if we're looking at the long-term survival of our society, we need to start thinking big. And like fusion energy is a really big idea that needs a lot of money in order to develop.
I can picture this island boy at MIT studying nuclear fusion. Even when you sit with Kealoha, it's as if he himself is a source of energy. He really does have a tough time sitting in one place. And when you first meet him, he leaps out of his chair to shake your hand. It's not just physical, his mind is always on the move, searching for something new, fresh, and challenging. Okay, so you graduated with your degree in nuclear engineering, and then what?
And then I thought, you know what, I need a break. It was really cool to be an engineer for a while, but I realized that I didn't want to be in a laboratory all day. For me, I needed to be outside, interfacing with people, and just have that interaction stuff going on. So I went into business consulting. I made a full 180 switch.
In a warmer place, by any chance?
In a warmer place. I was like, get me out of the East Coast. I went to California. So I ended up in San Francisco, which is actually kind of cold in itself, but a lot more temperate than the East Coast. For me, it was like a really great stomping ground because there's a lot of artists in there, and it's a very progressive city.
But your role was business consulting.
It's true, my role was business consultant.
And so how did that work out? Because you didn't go to school for that.
I didn't. So the idea was that, you're going through MIT and like there's a lot of recruiting going on. And so these business companies would come. They knew that none of us had any business experience. They just cared that we could solve problems and think. Oh. So they would come in and they would ask us sort of brain teasers, to have us think on the spot. They would ask us like, oh, how many telephone booths are in New York City? And so we'd have to sit there and show them our process of thinking of how many telephone booths are in New York City, and just kind of like show them the way that we logically deduce things, because that's what happens in business. Like you get presented with a problem and you have to break it down and solve the problem. So that's all it was. They knew that they could teach us business,
So it was a natural adjustment. It was a natural move.
Sure, but it took a lot of extra studying because you're going into this environment where there were a lot of business people who had studied and got their MBAs and all that kind of a thing. So I had to learn business, the basics of business in order to sort of keep up with that.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I loved it. It was fun. I mean, it was a love-hate relationship. You know, it was like it really freaked my brain out and sort of got me into another level of thinking. But at the same time, what I realized was I was working for these companies that really weren't doing a whole lot of good in the world. You know, I mean, like it was these large corporations and helping large corporations get richer. You know, that's really what it was. So I thought to myself, well, how can I devote my time? If I'm going to devote hours and hours and hours of my time, I want it to be towards something that's doing societal good, you know? So I had to get out of there. I spent 2 years in consulting, and it really taught me a lot of the way that the world works and the way that like business works and marketing and saving money and all that kind of a thing. So I was able to take those skills and start my own thing in Hawaii.
Because that seemed like a natural thing to do. Go to where you're from after going East Coast, West Coast, science, business.
Yeah, come home, return to the source. It had always been my goal. Ever since I left, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do these, you know, have these experiences, but I wanna come home. Home is, come on, Hawaii is the greatest place on earth as far as I'm concerned.
But had you
know?
intended on coming home to continue to look for nuclear fusion, or how did you imagine yourself coming home?
I wasn't exactly sure what was going to happen to get me home, and I never really knew what the path was going to be. Even when I did come home, I didn't know how long I was going to be able to be here for. You know, I just knew I needed to be home, and that it would work itself out somehow. So came home. I had saved up enough money to sort of like take some time off and just really figure out, okay, well, what am I about? You know, I talk all these big things about like how I want to like do good for society, but what is that? What are you gonna do? You know? So I just spent the year thinking, hiking, surfing, just getting back to like who I was when I was growing up.
A whole year?
Yeah, I saved up. Well, here's the thing, right? I was sleeping on my brother's couch, my parents' living room, in my car sometimes. I was just kind of like a nomad, you know. And I just pared down all my expenses to be able to just survive as long as I could without having to worry about making money. And I mean, consulting paid well. It was like, you know, that's kind of the reason why a lot of kids go into that, is just because it pays really well. So I was able to save that money and invest in my thinking and in my life, which is a really good investment, because I found my calling, which was to write poetry and perform it.
How did you find that?
Well, the first time I saw slam poetry, when I was in San Francisco, I just happened to, I was reading the newspaper, trying to look for something to do during the weekend, and I saw this slam poetry thing. And I was like, okay, let's go check it out. And when I went there, my brain just got, like, you have those moments where you're watching a performance, you're watching something, and your whole body just starts tingling because you're really just engaged in everything that's being said. And like, I just got my mind blown. And I was hooked from that point on, and I just started writing a lot right then and there. So that was like, what, the year 2000? Still in San Francisco, kind of like all my work just sort of got pushed to the side because I would just spend all my time writing. And I was spending all those late nights on Sunday night going to these poetry slams, and then Monday morning going to work all tired, and I didn't care, you know, like that. Like I was living again. I was like, I had something that really inspired me. So when I came home, I was doing all that hiking and surfing and just thinking, but in my way of processing all of that was through writing. So I would find myself, you know, I'm hiking up to the top of, you know, the Ko'olaus, and I got the journal and the pen, and I get to the top and I just write a poem, you know, and like these things were happening. So then I come back from the mountain and go to the coffee shop, and there's a open mic going on, and I would read that poem.
What are most of your poems about, or are they very, very, very different?
I try and keep myself open to whatever comes in, but I mean, I guess if you had to pare it down to like something that's always there, there's always some level of like positive messaging in there, you know, like how can we how can we shift our thinking or our lives to like get to a better place?
Well, you seem like a positive person. There's that slam poetry poem you wrote, Recess, and it's all about the mad joy of recess.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, like I wrote that piece. I used to do acting for kids, yeah. So I would go into these schools and the cafeterias, you know, and like we'd do crazy songs and act. And just one day after doing that, I was just so inspired by the kids' laughter, you know, and I was driving up the pulley and I was like, oh yeah, remember the days when we used to play on the playground like the poem just started coming. So I just pulled off to the side of the road, turned on my hazards, and just wrote the poem right in there. Like on the Pulley Highway, cars are whizzing by 35 miles per hour or whatever it was, and people are thinking like, what is this kid doing, right? I spent about 4 hours.
Wow.
Do you remember the days when we used to play on the playground every day? What was that thing we took? Recess! Yeah, that's right, recess! 50 minutes of sheer madness! 50 minutes of running around, getting down with all of your friends until the bell sounded, that inevitable bell that brought the well of time dry. And I remember those days so vividly, licking Jello instant pudding off our hands, making forks out of sand, and doing everything you can to just play. When was the last time you took 50 minutes out of your day to just run around and play? I mean, we used to do this every day. It was a staple of our existence, and those days are now distant. But if you close your eyes, you can remember in those 15 minutes that now seem trivial. But when you were a kid, 50 minutes was ephemeral, everlasting. It was a fleeting moment, but it was so dang real.
The best subjects are the ones that, when you're writing them, move you in some way, shape, or form. Either you laugh out loud, or you cry, or it just like you feel yourself just compelled to some kind of emotional whatever response. And then when you communicate that to an audience, you're aiming to get that same emotional response from them. As a performance artist, you're searching for those audiences that get you, or that get the type of work that you're doing. So what I've tried to do is, in Hawaii, I've tried to create an audience that treasures or that values the messaging.
Well, you said this type of poetry, or any type of poetry perhaps, can make your life better. How has hearing all of these wonderful poems, and maybe not so wonderful ones too, changed your life?
Whenever you go to one of these events, something is going to connect with you, hopefully. And then you go home and you think about it, and you write about it, and then, you know, it just makes your life better.
You can't fool the youth!
Because we know the truth, since your fact is fiction.
And addiction is the only thing you're selling.
And we're not buying.
The rebellious, glamorous, pimped up, hyped up, gullible, transparent,
Everybody's doing it.
played out image you created.
You see, we've done our research and found that of all the teens in Hawaii, only 15% are smokers. That's
15% of us think that cigarettes give a physical effect that's worth risking lung cancer.
50% of us are inconsiderate to our neighbors.
15% of us actually think that cigarettes make you look like the hot model in the commercial who
Obviously doesn't smoke because she knows that if she did, then
10 years from now, she'd be sporting yellow teeth,
wrinkles, and whacked out breath.
On the other 85% of us, we're the ones running courts, running squads, running circles,
dunking, jumping, running decks,
scoring points,
Meeting cuties,
looking hot as all heck,
caring about our bodies,
Getting A's,
getting grades,
saving our lives,
smelling like we're supposed to,
going spray,
getting barreled,
living dreams, scaling mountains,
flying,
diving,
diving, hiking, riding, climbing. If
climbing.
we're tired of the smoke-out fads pushing fictional facts,
On the obvious smoke, I laugh. Then just give it right back.
said you can't fool the youth.
'Cause we know the truth.
Yeah, you can't fool the youth.
'Cause we know.
So lots of transitions in your life.
Lots of
Navigating cultures and then moving between one poem and another, one song and another.
Yeah, absolutely, and I love it. I embrace it. Really, I feel like I'm just here to learn about everything that I possibly can. I'm a sponge, so I try and soak up everything. You know, if there's some weird thing going on, some event that I've never been to, I want to go, and I just want to be in the middle of it and learn everything that I can about it.
I have a feeling you don't have a 5-year or 10-year plan. It's a straight course, do you?
I don't think I have ever had a 5 or 10-year plan. I don't even know what I'm gonna do tomorrow. That's the way that I live my life, though. I try and I keep myself open to the possibilities, and you know, for me, it's comfortable. I'm comfortable not knowing what's gonna happen in the future.
After the unpredictable path that his life has already taken, who knows in which direction Kealoha will turn next? But with his positive messaging, his boundless energy, and his ability to lead and mentor people of all ages, we can't wait to see what he's going to do. For Long Story Short and PBS Hawaii, I'm Leslie Wilcox. Ahui ho kako.
For audio and written transcripts of this program and all episodes of Long Story Short with Leslie Wilcox, visit pbshawaii.org.
The first time that I saw a poet who completely resonated with me and opened me up to, wow, like that voice is mine. I felt like she was speaking for me was Lois Ann Yamanaka. She came to my high school and she just read poems. And I went away from that session going, wow, you can do that with words? Really?
We teach each other how to flip, slide, ride, or fly. We could have done anything. It didn't matter. It was engaging. It was entertaining. We were learning how to be active and creative together. Remember? And now I see the masses of our generations falling into the trap of daily routine, that unceasing monotony plaguing our society, and I be resisting. You see, I don't deal well with monotony. When did watching TV ever become an activity? Letting time pass, performing passive viewing, watching someone else do something we're not actually doing? Think about that, y'all. Letting time pass, performing passive viewing, watching someone else do something we're not actually doing. It's like we're recessing through the eyes of someone else's 15 minutes of fame. We could be outliving our own 15 minutes of game. Do you remember the days when we used to play on the playground every day? Yeah. What was that thing we took? Recess. Thank you.